Good evening, dear listener. As you settle into bed, let the day's noise begin to fade. Find a comfortable position, let your shoulders rest, and take a gentle breath, in and out. Tonight, I'll take you on a journey, not just through history, but across the calm waters of the ancient Mediterranean. It is a story of vision, of power, and of light. The story of a city born by the sea and the dream that gave rise to one of the wonders of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria. But every great wonder begins with a beginning, and so, tonight, our story begins not with stone or fire, but with a young man and his dream for a city. Close your eyes. Imagine the sound of waves, soft and rhythmic, lapping against a quiet shore. The air is warm, touched by the salt of the sea. Above, the stars scatter across the dark sky, and in the distance, faint lanterns flicker from passing ships. The sea is peaceful, yet it hides its dangers. Sharp rocks, shifting sands, and shallow shoals lurk beneath the surface. For sailors, every coastline is both a promise and a risk. Now let us step back in time to the year 332 BC. A young conqueror stands upon this very shore. His name is Alexander of Macedon, but history remembers him as Alexander the Great. He has already marched across the lands of Greece, Asia Minor, and Persia. And now he has come to Egypt. Here, something changes. Unlike in other lands, Alexander is not seen as a mere invader. The Egyptians, weary of Persian rule, welcome him as a liberator. At the Temple of the Oracle in the desert oasis of Siwa, Alexander is even hailed as the son of the god Ammonius. But beyond titles and victories, Alexander has a vision not of war, but of creation. Standing on Egypt's northern coast, Alexander gazes at the island of Pharos. It lies just off the shore, surrounded by shallow waters, with natural harbors to the east and west. Behind him stretches the fertile Nile Delta, a green lifeline feeding the land. Before him, the Mediterranean, a sea that connects continents, cultures, and empires. And in that moment, Alexander sees what others do not. He sees the perfect place for a city. Not just any city, but a gateway between worlds. A city that would unite East and West, Africa and the Mediterranean. A city that would bear his name, Alexandria. Construction begins swiftly. His architects and surveyors mark out the plan, not with randomness, but with order and clarity. Wide, straight streets are drawn in the sand, crossing each other like a grid. A great main avenue will stretch for miles, lined with trees and colonnades. There will be temples, palaces, marketplaces, and gardens, a city worthy of an empire. To the north, the harbor will welcome ships from every land, Greek triremes, Phoenician traders, Roman merchants, even vessels from distant India. To the south, canals will link the city to the Nile, ensuring it thrives on trade and grain. It is a city built not only for power, but for permanence. And yet, Alexander himself will never see it finished. Just a few years later, in 323 BCE, he dies far away in Babylon. His empire fractures, divided among his generals. But his dream does not vanish. His successor in Egypt, Ptolemy Isoter, takes the dream as his own. Alexandria becomes the jewel of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Palaces rise, scholars are invited, traders arrive from across the seas. The city becomes alive, a place where Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, and many other cultures meet. If you were to walk its early streets, you would hear the chatter of many tongues, smell the spice of far-off lands, and see ships unloading treasures at the busy docks. Alexandria, from its very birth, is a city of diversity, a place where ideas and people come together. And always, just offshore, lies the island of Pharos. At first, it is simply part of the harbor's edge. But in time, it will become the stage for something extraordinary, a lighthouse so tall, so brilliant, that it will shine for more than 1,000 years. But for now, the city itself is the wonder. A young city filled with promise. A city born of vision, carrying the name of a conqueror, destined to become a beacon of the ancient world. As the chapter closes, imagine once more the quiet sea. The sun sets over the horizon, casting gold across the waves. The city of Alexandria stirs with life, but in the distance, the stars begin to appear. The story of its great lighthouse has not yet begun, but the foundation is here in this dream on this shore. And so, with the sea at rest and the city's lights glowing faintly in the distance, we let this first chapter drift gently into silence. As we return to our story, imagine yourself drifting upon the waters of the ancient Mediterranean. The waves are steady, their rhythm almost like a lullaby. The sails above you flutter in the evening breeze. Ahead lies the shoreline of Alexandria, new, bright, and alive with promise. The harbors are busy. Ships come and go, carrying goods from faraway lands, olive oil from Greece, cedar wood from Lebanon, glassware from Syria, spices from Arabia, and ivory from Africa. Alexandria is young, yet already the heartbeat of trade. But for sailors, the sea is not always kind. The waters around the island of Pharos are treacherous. Hidden rocks, shallow sandbanks, and shifting currents make the approach dangerous. In the light of day, a skilled navigator might pass safely, but at night or in storm, the sea becomes a place of fear. Picture yourself as one of those sailors. You've been at sea for weeks, guiding your ship by the stars. Supplies are low, your crew is weary, and every man dreams of reaching land. The coastline appears in the distance, but it is faint, shrouded by mist. You know Alexandria is near, and yet, without a clear guide, one wrong turn could dash your vessel against unseen rocks. This was the problem that faced the rulers of Egypt. A magnificent harbor had been built. A city of trade was thriving, but the sea demanded its price. Too many ships, too many lives were lost at the very gates of Alexandria. And so, under the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, the son of Ptolemy I, and the heir to Alexander's vision, a bold idea was born. What if, upon the island of Pharos, there stood a beacon so strong, so brilliant, that it could guide every sailor home? Not just a torch on a hill, not just a simple fire by the shore, but a tower, vast, commanding, unlike anything the world had ever seen. The task of designing such a marvel fell to a man named Sostratus of Cnidus. He was an architect, an engineer, and a dreamer in his own right. His challenge was not only to build tall, but to build strong, a structure that could withstand both the winds of the Mediterranean and the shaking of the earth itself. Imagine him, walking along the shores of Pharos. The waves crash at his feet as he sketches in the sand. He sees not just stone and mortar, but light, a flame that will shine for miles across the sea, reflected by polished mirrors, magnified by the brilliance of white limestone walls. The vision takes shape, a great tower of 3 tiers, each one rising above the other. At the base, a square foundation, strong and solid. Above it, an octagonal section, tapering toward the sky. And at the top, a slender cylindrical tower crowned with fire. By day, the sunlight would gleam upon its pale stone, guiding ships even under clear skies. By night, a great fire would burn, its glow carried far into the horizon by bronze mirrors. It would not only be a practical guide, it would be a statement, a declaration to the world that Alexandria is a city of greatness, a place where human ingenuity rises against nature's dangers, a city where light conquers darkness. Construction begins, and slowly, the island of Pharos is transformed. Blocks of limestone are hauled into place. Workers toil under the hot Egyptian sun. The sounds of chisels and hammers echo across the harbor. The tower rises tier by tier, like a stairway reaching toward the heavens. And as it rises, so too does its meaning. To sailors, it will mean safety. To merchants, prosperity. To rulers, power. And to the world, wonder. But for now, in these early days, it is still a dream in progress. The fires are not yet lit. The mirrors are not yet polished. The sailors must still steer carefully through the shoals. Yet the idea has been born. A light for the lost. A guide for the weary. A beacon that will shine not just across the sea, but across centuries of human memory. So as the stars appear once more over Alexandria's harbor, imagine the faint outline of the unfinished tower upon Pharos Island. It is not yet complete, but already sailors whisper of it. Already, the world waits in anticipation. And soon, very soon, the flame atop Pharos will blaze, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria will join the wonders of the ancient world. Settle back once more. Feel the calm rhythm of your breath in and out, like the waves along a quiet shore. The night is still, the stars stretch endlessly above, and in the distance, a glow begins to rise. A glow not of moonlight, not of stars, but of something made by human hands. This is the light of Pharos. This is the great lighthouse of Alexandria. Imagine yourself arriving by sea centuries ago. Your ship, weathered from weeks of travel, crests the final waves of the Mediterranean. Ahead, the dark outline of Alexandria slowly emerges against the horizon. But even before you see the city walls, even before the masts of other ships come into view, you see the tower. The lighthouse rises from the island of Pharos like a mountain of stone, built not by nature, but by human vision. At its base, broad and square, the structure seems immovable, a fortress against the sea. Upon this foundation stands the next tier, octagonal in shape, its 8 sides narrowing as they climb higher into the sky. Above that, the final section, a slender cylinder, stretches upward like a pillar, carrying with it the fire that crowns the whole. Altogether, the lighthouse reaches between 100 and 130 meters in height, taller than nearly every structure in the ancient world, surpassed only by the Great Pyramid of Giza. For more than 1,000 years, it would remain one of the tallest buildings ever constructed by human hands. And though it is vast, it is not clumsy. The proportions are harmonious, each tier flowing gracefully into the next. The pale limestone of its walls catches the sun by day, gleaming like polished ivory. By night, the tower is alive with firelight, its glow dancing across the waters, reaching sailors far out at sea. The lighthouse was built of white limestone blocks, quarried from the deserts of Egypt. Each stone was carefully cut, fitted, and placed, some weighing several tons. To lift and position them, ancient engineers used pulleys, cranes, and ramps, methods perfected by centuries of Egyptian builders. The joints between stones were sealed with molten lead, not only to hold them firm, but to allow the structure to flex slightly when the earth trembled. This was no accident. Alexandria lay in a region prone to earthquakes, and the builders knew their tower must withstand both wind and ground. Within the walls, stairways spiraled upward, carrying keepers, fuel, and supplies to the upper levels. Some say there were ramps wide enough for donkeys to climb, carrying bundles of wood or jars of oil to feed the eternal flame above. At its very top stood a great open chamber, where a fire burned by night and mirrors flashed sunlight by day. The most astonishing of these was said to be a giant polished bronze mirror, angled to reflect and project light far across the sea. By some accounts, it could be seen more than 30 miles away. Let us walk through the lighthouse, tier by tier. The first tier, the square base. Picture a great square, its sides more than 60 meters long, its walls thick and solid. This base rose straight and strong, like a fortress. At each corner, statues stood guard, perhaps tritons, the half-human, half-fish beings of the sea, whose horns were said to guide sailors home. This tier contained storerooms, quarters for workers, and the broad ramps that allowed supplies to move upward. The second tier, the octagon above the square, rose the octagon, 8 sides tapering as they reached toward the sky. This section was lighter than the base, yet still immense. Windows opened along its sides, allowing sea winds to whistle through and relieving the weight of stone. Imagine walking within its spiral halls, hearing your footsteps echo against cool limestone walls, while outside, gulls circle and cry above the harbor. The third tier, the cylinder. Finally, the tower narrowed into a tall cylindrical shaft. This was the lighthouse's crown, slender yet strong, soaring higher than any column of the ancient world. From its summit, the flame of Pharos would burn, tended day and night, never allowed to die. Some accounts tell us that a statue of Zeus, or perhaps Poseidon, stood above it all, gazing across the waters, as if the gods themselves blessed the tower with protection. Now imagine nightfall. The city of Alexandria lies quiet, its streets fading into shadow. The harbor still murmurs with the voices of sailors, but above all their chatter, a single light begins to glow. On the crown of the lighthouse, keepers build a fire. Bundles of dry wood crackle, sparks leap into the night, and the flame takes hold. Slowly, the light swells brighter and brighter until it floods the chamber. Behind it, the great bronze mirror is adjusted, angled carefully, and suddenly, the fire becomes a beam. Across the dark sea, far beyond the breakers, sailors lift their heads. There it is, the glow of Pharos. No longer do they fear the hidden rocks, for the light has found them. No longer do they drift uncertain, for the lighthouse points the way. By day, when the fire rests, the tower itself shines. Its white stone, polished by sun, is visible for miles, a landmark against the horizon. Some say that from the deck of a distant ship, it seemed less like a tower and more like a pillar of light rising from the very edge of the earth. To the Ptolemaic kings, the lighthouse was not just a tool. It was a message to every sailor who entered the harbor. You are entering a place of greatness. A message to every rival kingdom. Alexandria is powerful, ordered, and enduring. A message to the world. Here is a beacon, both of light and of civilization. Coins were struck with the image of the lighthouse. Travelers wrote of its wonder in their journals. For centuries, it stood not only as a guide to ships, but as a symbol of the city itself. Even in distant lands, when sailors spoke of a lighthouse, they did not simply say a tower with a fire. They said a pharos. The name of the island became the word for lighthouses everywhere, in Latin, in French, in Spanish, in Italian. Even today, echoes of that word remain, woven into languages across the world. Now, let us return to you, the sailor. You have crossed the Mediterranean. The journey has been long, the sea uncertain. But now, as you approach the Egyptian coast, your eyes catch the glow. It is steady, reassuring, unwavering. You feel relief, safety, hope. Your ship passes into the harbor, waves calming as the great breakwaters embrace you. Around you, other ships sail in from Greece, from Carthage, from Arabia, from Nubia. Above them all, the lighthouse watches, its flame unwavering. And as you step onto the docks of Alexandria, you know that you have arrived not just at a city, but at the very heart of the ancient world. The Lighthouse of Alexandria would stand for nearly 1,500 years. Through empires, through wars, through the rise and fall of kings, it remained. Generations of sailors looked for its light. Generations of storytellers whispered of its brilliance. For them, it was not only stone and fire, but something greater, a promise of safe passage, a reminder that even in the vast darkness of the sea, there could always be light. And so, as the night deepens and the waves grow softer, let us hold the image of the lighthouse in our minds. A tower of 3 tiers, square, octagonal, and round, gleaming in the sun, blazing in the night. A wonder not only of engineering, but of imagination. The fire of Pharos still burns in memory, and as you drift now into rest, may its light guide you safely through the seas of sleep. Take another slow breath, in and out. The sea has brought us safely to shore, guided by the glowing flame of the lighthouse. Now, as dawn rises over the horizon, let us step off the ship and walk into the heart of Alexandria. The morning air is warm and filled with the scent of the sea. The harbor bustles with life, sailors shouting, traders unloading baskets of goods, camels kneeling to carry cargo inland. Beyond the docks, the city begins to stretch before you. Wide, sunlit streets open in straight lines, crossing each other in perfect order, forming a great grid of avenues. Unlike older cities with winding alleys and tangled passages, Alexandria feels deliberate, designed the vision of architects who believed in clarity and scale. Above the rooftops rise domes, temples, and colonnades. Palms sway gently in the breeze. Markets spill into the streets, their stalls laden with fabrics, pottery, scrolls, and spices. And everywhere, the sound of many tongues: Greek, Egyptian, Phoenician, Hebrew, Latin, Aramaic. Alexandria is not just a city of Egypt. It is a city of the world. Here, East meets West. Greek soldiers and Egyptian priests walk side by side. Merchants from India bring cotton and jewels. Caravans from Arabia arrive with frankincense and myrrh. African traders bring ivory and gold, while sailors from Italy bring wine and glass. But more than goods, the city thrives on the exchange of ideas. Philosophers debate beneath shaded porticos. Mathematicians sketch diagrams in the sand. Priests from distant lands compare gods and rituals. The city itself seems to hum with knowledge, as if it were not merely built of stone and wood, but of thought and conversation. At its heart lies the dream of the Ptolemaic dynasty to make Alexandria not only the wealthiest port of the Mediterranean, but the intellectual capital of the world. Imagine walking now toward a great complex near the royal palace. The streets grow quieter, more refined. Columns rise along courtyards, gardens bloom with fragrant flowers, and marble steps lead upward to a vast building. This is the Great Library of Alexandria. According to tradition, the library was founded under Ptolemy II Philadelphus, though its roots likely began with Ptolemei. It was said to be part of the Mouseion, a temple dedicated to the Muses, goddesses of inspiration, learning, and the arts. But this was no ordinary temple. It was a sanctuary of knowledge, a place where learning itself was worshipped. Inside, the halls stretched wide and tall, lined with shelves of papyrus scrolls. Imagine row upon row, hundreds, then thousands, then hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Some estimates suggest as many as 400,000 to 700,000 works were housed here at its height, texts from Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and beyond. Every ship that entered Alexandria's harbor was said to be searched, and any books found on board were taken, copied by scribes, and the originals placed within the library. The collection spanned everything imaginable: poetry and drama of Homer, Sophocles, Euripides, histories from Herodotus, Thucydides, and the annals of Egyptian pharaohs, philosophy from Plato, Aristotle, and their schools, mathematics from Pythagoras, Euclid, and Archimedes, science and medicine from Hippocrates, Galen, and scholars of Babylon, astronomy from Babylonian star charts to Egyptian observations of the heavens, sacred texts from Jewish scriptures to writings of Eastern traditions. Imagine the atmosphere. The air faintly smells of papyrus and ink. The halls are quiet, filled with the gentle scratching of pens, the low murmur of scholars at work. Sunlight filters through high windows, casting golden patterns across marble floors. Every corner holds a voice from the past, preserved in ink, waiting to be read. But a library is nothing without those who read it. And Alexandria gathered the greatest minds of the ancient world. Here walked Euclid, the father of geometry, who wrote the Elements, a work so clear and precise that it would guide mathematicians for over 2,000 years. Here studied Eratosthenes, who, using shadows and simple measurements, calculated the circumference of the earth with astonishing accuracy within a few hundred miles of the true figure. Imagine him standing in the midday sun, comparing the shadows cast in Alexandria and faraway Syene, realizing the earth must be curved. Here taught Hero of Alexandria, an inventor who designed marvelous machines, automatic doors powered by steam, coin-operated dispensers, even the first recorded steam engine, the Yalopal. Here worked Galen, whose studies of medicine would guide doctors for centuries. Here, astronomers traced the movements of planets, debating whether the Earth was the center of the universe, or if the stars themselves might move in greater harmony. And here, in this city of scrolls, stories and myths were gathered too. The tales of gods and heroes, the wisdom of old kingdoms, the poems that sang of love, war, and fate all preserved, all studied, all remembered. The Mouseion was not only a library, it was, in many ways, the world's first university. Scholars lived, studied, and taught here, supported by the patronage of the Ptolemaic kings. They received stipends, food, and lodging, freeing them to dedicate their lives to thought and discovery. Imagine walking through its courtyards. You pass groups of men in robes, deep in debate. One gestures with his hands as he explains a theory. Another bends to draw a diagram in the sand. A third listens, nods, and offers a counterpoint. It is a place alive with curiosity, where no question is too small and no idea too vast. And it is not only Greeks who gather here. Egyptians, Jews, Babylonians, Indians, voices from many lands join in conversation, each adding their own wisdom to the growing river of knowledge. In this way, Alexandria became a lighthouse of a different kind. If the great tower of Pharos guided sailors through the sea, the great library guided seekers through the ocean of human thought. Both were beacons. Both offered light, one to the eyes, the other to the mind. And just as sailors felt relief when they saw the glow of Pharos, so too did scholars feel wonder when they entered these halls. For here, within the scrolls, they could journey across time and space, listening to voices long gone, learning from lands far beyond their own. Think now of the symbolism. The lighthouse stood tall, reaching upward, flame burning against the dark. The library stretched outward, collecting, preserving, embracing all the world's words. Together, they made Alexandria not just a city, but a symbol of human aspiration. Travelers who came here often wrote of its marvels. To walk in Alexandria was to feel that you were at the very center of civilization, where light, knowledge, and culture shone brighter than anywhere else. Let us imagine for a moment that you are there. The sun is lowering, casting a golden hue across the streets. You step into the library. The air is cool, shaded by towering columns. You walk between shelves of scrolls, each one carefully tied and labeled. You pause, unroll one gently, and find yourself reading lines written hundreds of years earlier by a poet who lived and died long before. Yet here, his voice speaks as if alive. You pass into a courtyard where philosophers debate beneath olive trees. Their voices rise and fall like music. In another chamber, mathematicians gather, compasses in hand, drawing circles and lines, discovering truths that will last for millennia. Beyond them, physicians dissect, observing the mysteries of the human body, searching for cures. Everywhere, knowledge unfolds. And above it all, in the harbor beyond, the light of Pharos burns. Stone and fire for the sailors, ink and scrolls for the scholars. Together, they make Alexandria a city of light. As night falls, the library grows quiet. The scribes set down their pens. The scholars leave their chambers. Torches are lit along the colonnades, their flames flickering gently. The stars emerge above the city, reflected in the calm waters of the harbor. In the distance, the lighthouse glows, guiding ships home. And here, within the city, another light glows silently, the light of knowledge, the flame of human curiosity, sheltered in scrolls, preserved by hands and passed through generations. Alexandria, in its time, was not only a city of trade or empire. It was a city of ideas. A city that reminded the world that learning, like fire, must be tended, must be fed, must be shared. And so, as you drift toward sleep, let your mind rest with the thought of this great city where sailors found safety and scholars found wisdom, where light shone not only from a tower, but from within the hearts and minds of those who dreamed. The library and the lighthouse together made Alexandria more than stone, more than mortar, more than scrolls or fire. They made it a beacon of humanity itself. Take a slow breath in and a gentle breath out. The waves roll softly against the shore, and in the distance, the great lighthouse stands tall, its flame steady against the night sky. But now let us shift our gaze from the tower itself to the world that surrounded it, to the life around the Lighthouse of Alexandria. The lighthouse rose upon the island of Pharos, just off the coast of Alexandria, joined to the city by a long causeway called the Heptastadion. Imagine this great bridge, 7 stadia in length, almost a mile, stretching across the waters, linking island and mainland. On either side, the sea lapped gently, dotted with fishing boats and merchant vessels. The island itself was lively. Fishermen mended nets on the shore. Children played among the rocks, chasing crabs and laughing as waves splashed their feet. Merchants set up stalls, selling olives, bread, and salted fish to sailors before their long journeys. Donkeys clattered across stone paths, carrying amphorae of wine or jars of oil. The air was thick with the scent of the sea, the brine of drying nets, and the smoke of cooking fires. And above it all, always, was the tower, its light casting long golden fingers across the dark waves, its shadow stretching across the island during the day. The lighthouse was not simply a marvel of engineering. It was a neighbor, a guardian, a silent companion to those who lived and worked beneath it. Around the base of the lighthouse, the harbor teemed with ships, great merchant vessels from Greece, Rome, and Carthage. Sleek warships of the Ptolemaic fleet, their sails furled. Sturdy fishing boats bobbing gently, their nets heavy with the morning's catch. The sailors who landed here were from every corner of the known world. Some spoke Greek, others Latin, Egyptian, Phoenician, or strange tongues from lands even farther away. At night, when the day's labors were done, they gathered in taverns along the shore. Music drifted out, the pluck of a lyre, the beat of a drum, the soft wail of a flute. Stories were told of storms survived, of sea monsters glimpsed in distant waters, of treasures found and kingdoms visited. The lighthouse itself often found its way into these tales. For to sailors, it was more than stone and fire. It was a symbol of safety, a light that meant home, or at least refuge. Many swore that when its flame appeared through mist or darkness, it was as if the gods themselves were watching over them. At the top of the great tower, tending the fire, were the lighthouse keepers. Their lives were devoted to ensuring the flame never faltered. Day after day, night after night, they carried wood, fuel, and oil up the spiraling ramps inside. Imagine the climb, winding upward through chamber after chamber, the steps echoing beneath their feet, the air growing warmer as they neared the blaze. At the summit, the flame roared within its great bronze cauldron. Mirrors of polished metal reflected and magnified its light, casting it far across the waters. The keepers worked tirelessly, feeding the fire, adjusting the mirrors, ensuring the light never dimmed. In storms, when winds howled and rain lashed against the stone, their task became even harder, yet they persevered, for to let the flame go out would endanger countless lives. One can imagine the quiet pride they must have felt, knowing their labor guided ships to safety, that their care for the fire was, in truth, care for the sailors, the merchants, the fishermen, for the entire city of Alexandria. As the sun rose each morning, life around the lighthouse began anew. Fishermen set out in their boats, sails catching the morning breeze. Merchants prepared their stalls, arranging fruits, grains, and spices in colorful rows. Children carried water jars from wells, balancing them carefully on their shoulders. Women ground grain into flour, their rhythmic motions mingling with the cries of gulls circling above. At midday, the island bustled with noise. Dock workers shouted as they hauled crates. Sailors repaired sails and scraped barnacles from their hulls. Travelers disembarked, weary from long journeys, their eyes widening as they gazed up at the colossal tower. Camels laden with goods clattered across the causeway, bound for Alexandria's markets. And when evening came, a hush seemed to settle. The great flame at the top of Pharos was kindled, its glow spreading slowly across the sea. Sailors watched it with reverence. Families on the island paused to admire its beauty. Lovers walked the shore, hand in hand, the golden light reflected in their eyes. From time to time, the island came alive with celebrations. Festivals in honor of the gods, Poseidon, ruler of the seas, and Isis, protector of sailors, filled the streets with music, dancing, and offerings. Torches lit the pathways, and garlands of flowers were hung along the causeway. Priests carried statues of the gods to the shore, blessing the ships before they set sail. For Alexandrians, the lighthouse was not only practical, it was sacred. Many believed it to be a divine gift, a structure that bridged the realms of mortals and gods, of land and sea, of knowledge and mystery. And so, in times of festival, it became a centerpiece of devotion and gratitude. Imagine being a traveler, approaching Alexandria by sea after weeks of perilous journey. Perhaps you had crossed the Aegean with its sudden storms, or sailed along the rugged coasts of North Africa. Perhaps you had braved the open waters of the eastern Mediterranean with its endless horizon. Then, one night, weary and anxious, you see it, a distant glow. Small at first, then brighter, steadier, until at last it reveals itself as the light atop the Pharos. Relief floods your heart. You know you are near safe harbor, near food, rest, and welcome. For countless travelers, this moment, the first glimpse of the lighthouse, must have been unforgettable, and upon arrival, they would step onto Pharos Island, greeted by its bustling life, vendors offering bread and olives, porters calling out their services, children laughing as they ran among the ships. The sight, the sound, the smell of it, a place alive, vibrant, framed always by the towering presence of the lighthouse above. In this way, the base of the lighthouse became more than a harbor. It became a meeting place of worlds. Greeks and Egyptians, Romans and Phoenicians, Arabs and Nubians all passed through. Each brought their own customs, their own language, their own goods and songs. And in the mingling of these peoples, Alexandria grew richer, not only in wealth, but in culture. You could hear a fisherman humming an Egyptian hymn while a Greek merchant haggled nearby. You could smell spices from Arabia blending with the salty tang of dried fish. You could see Roman soldiers drinking wine beside Nubian sailors, laughing together despite their differences in tongue. The lighthouse, silent and steadfast, bore witness to it all. At last, as the stars emerged above, the life of the island slowed. Fires burned low in the hearths. Taverns grew quieter, their songs softer. Families gathered, sharing bread, figs, and stories. The sea shimmered under moonlight, waves whispering gently to the shore. From the highest chamber of the lighthouse, the fire blazed bright, its beams sweeping the dark waters. The keepers tended it carefully, as they always did, ensuring it would last until dawn. And for those below, sailors, fishermen, families, its glow was both comfort and promise. A reminder that even in darkness, there was always light to guide them. And so the island of Pharos slept, cradled by the sea, watched over by its towering guardian. As you rest now, imagine yourself lying on the sands of Pharos Island. The waves lap gently at the shore. The night air is warm, scented with salt and distant blossoms. Above you, stars scatter across the sky, and in their midst, the lighthouse glows, steady, eternal. Life around the lighthouse was simple, yet profound. It was the laughter of children, the toil of sailors, the devotion of priests, the chatter of merchants. It was the hum of daily existence, lived in the shadow of a wonder. And through it all, the great flame burned, connecting land and sea, home and horizon, humanity and the divine. Let this image carry you gently toward sleep. A world where light never fails, where safe harbor is always near, where life unfolds with rhythm and peace beside the eternal sea. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was not only a marvel of stone and fire, it was a living presence in the lives of those who dwelt around it, a heartbeat of the harbor, a soul of the city. And in remembering it, we too are guided not by fire, but by the gentle glow of history. Close your eyes. Feel the hush of the sea at night. The waves rise and fall like the breath of a giant asleep beneath the waters. The stars shimmer above, eternal and watchful. And in the midst of it all, the Lighthouse of Alexandria rises, a silent flame that does more than guide ships. It sparks imagination. It invites stories. It becomes not only stone and fire, but legend. Let us wander together now into the myths, the whispers, the symbolic meanings that surrounded the great Pharos. Even in its own time, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. That title alone infused it with a kind of magic. For ordinary people, fishermen, sailors, farmers, to live in the presence of something named among the greatest works of humanity was to feel they dwelled in a place touched by the divine. Sailors whispered that the lighthouse's fire was not ordinary flame, but a gift from Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmanship. Others claimed it was the eye of Zeus, watching over seafarers. Egyptians saw it as blessed by Ra, the sun god, a piece of the sun captured on earth to shine even in darkness. No one could look upon the Pharos without feeling it was more than human work. And so, stories began to grow. One of the first legends is tied to the very man who built it, Sostratus of Cnidus. History tells us that Sostratus was the architect commissioned by Ptolemy II to raise the tower. But whispers tell a more curious tale. According to later writers, Sostratus longed for recognition beyond his patron's shadow. For kings claimed monuments, but architects often vanished into obscurity. And so, Sostratus is said to have inscribed his own name on the foundation of the lighthouse, but not openly. He carved into the stone. Sostratus of Cnidus, friend of all who sail the seas, dedicates this to the savior gods. Then, over this, he covered the words with plaster, on which was carved the name of the king. Over time, as the plaster crumbled, the truth revealed itself. Sostratus's name endured, hidden yet eternal, like a secret message to future generations. The tale has the air of myth, part truth, part story, but in it we see something more: the human yearning to be remembered, to carve one's name into history as surely as the lighthouse carved its light into the night. Among the most enduring myths of the Pharos was the story of its giant mirror. Ancient accounts describe a mirror at the top of the tower, polished to brilliance, said to reflect the light of the sun by day and the fire by night. Travelers claimed the mirror could project beams for miles, so strong that it could even burn enemy ships before they reached the harbor. Imagine the stories told in taverns at night, sailors leaning close, eyes wide, as one recounted how the mirror set whole fleets ablaze. Others swore it could see far into the distance, allowing Alexandrians to spot approaching ships long before they arrived. Some even said the mirror was magical, capable of showing events in distant lands, like a window into the unknown. Was any of it true? Perhaps not. But for those who gazed up at the glittering summit, the possibilities seemed real. And in the telling, the mirror became legend, a symbol of power, of protection, of Alexandria's unmatched knowledge and strength. To the Egyptians, the lighthouse was not only practical, it was sacred. Many believed it was a temple as much as a tower, a structure that honored the gods who ruled over the sea and sky. Some said it was dedicated to Zeus Soter, Zeus the Savior. Others linked it to protector Isis, goddess of sailors and navigation. Sailors offered prayers as they passed, casting small tokens into the sea, a coin, a wreath, a few drops of wine. Each gift was a plea: keep me safe, guide me home. To the Ptolemaic kings, however, the lighthouse was also a symbol of power. Its light proclaimed Alexandria's greatness to all who approached. It said, "Here is the city of knowledge. Here is the city of strength. Here is the city where gods walk among men." And so, myth and meaning blended. The lighthouse was both shrine and fortress, both prayer and proclamation. Sailors are storytellers by nature, and the Pharos fed their imagination. One tale told of a storm so fierce that it swallowed ships whole. For days, thunder rolled and waves raged. But through it all, the light of Pharos never wavered. Sailors who survived swore they had seen a colossal figure, a guardian spirit, standing atop the tower, shielding the flame with his cloak. To them, the lighthouse was not only stone, but a living protector. Another tale told of a fisherman who lost his way in thick fog. His small boat drifted helplessly, his hope fading. But then, through the mist, he saw a golden beam. Guided by the lighthouse, he reached shore. In gratitude, he dedicated his life to tending the tower's fire, becoming one of its earliest keepers. Whether true or not, the story reminded sailors that the Pharos was not just light, it was salvation. The fame of the Pharos spread far beyond Alexandria. Travelers carried tales of it to Greece, to Rome, to the edges of Asia. In distant ports, people spoke of a tower so tall it touched the clouds, so bright it rivaled the sun. Some exaggerated it into mythic proportions, saying it was built by giants, or that it was a stairway for the gods themselves to descend to earth. In medieval times, long after the lighthouse had crumbled, Arab travelers still told stories of its wonders. Some described secret passages, hidden treasures, and inscriptions filled with mysterious wisdom. Others claimed the tower was enchanted, built with knowledge lost from Atlantis. Even as centuries passed, the line between history and myth blurred. The lighthouse lived on in imagination, its reality magnified by the dreams of those who spoke of it. Beyond the myths of gods and mirrors, the Pharos became a symbol of guidance itself. Light, in every culture, has been a metaphor for wisdom, hope, and safety. To sailors, the lighthouse was a promise that no matter how dark the night, there was always a way forward. To scholars in Alexandria, it mirrored the library. Both were beacons of knowledge, one guiding ships across seas, the other guiding minds across the unknown. Even today, when we use the word Pharos, it means lighthouse. The very name became a symbol of light against darkness, of knowledge against ignorance, of safety against danger. The myths remind us that people saw more than stone and flame. They saw meaning, comfort, and inspiration. And so, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was as much a creation of stories as it was of marble and fire. The legends of its mirror, the whispers of gods who blessed it, the tales of sailors who owed it their lives, all of these gave it a soul. Imagine, as you drift toward sleep, that you're a sailor in a faraway time. The sea is dark, the waves uncertain. Then, on the horizon, a glow appears. Not just a light of stone and fire, but a light of stories, of myths, of meaning. A light that carries with it the promise of home. The lighthouse was a wonder of the ancient world, yes. But more than that, it was a wonder of the human heart. A reminder that we need not only stone towers to guide us, we need stories, myths, and symbols. For they, too, are lighthouses, guiding us through the night. Rest now without thought. That wherever darkness surrounds, there is always a story, always a light, waiting to guide us safely through. The sea is calm tonight, a mirror of silver beneath the stars. The wind hums softly, and the distant memory of a flame still flickers in our imagination. The Lighthouse of Alexandria stands in your mind's eye, proud and tall, as it once did. Its tiers rise upward, its fire shines across the waters. But now let us drift forward in time, centuries ahead, when the stones that once dazzled the ancient world began to tremble, loosen, and fall. Like all great wonders, the Pharos was not eternal. Its fall was not sudden, but slow, like the sigh of a giant settling into slumber. Tonight, we'll explore that story, not a tale of destruction alone, but of change, of memory, and of how even ruins can still hold light. For more than 1,000 years, the lighthouse endured. Imagine that 1,000 years of storms, wars, shifting empires, and restless seas. Its fire was tended through dynasties, through Roman rule, through the arrival of new faiths and new peoples. Few human creations can boast such a span of life. But stone, however strong, is no match for time and earth. The island of Pharos lay in a region where the ground beneath could shudder, where the plates of the earth shifted restlessly. The sea itself was a force both friend and foe. It carried ships to Alexandria, yet it eroded the base of the tower with its endless tide. The lighthouse stood tall, but already unseen cracks had begun to whisper. The first great blow came in the 4th century CE. Alexandria had by then changed much from the days of Ptolemy and Cleopatra. The library was diminished, the city reshaped by Roman and later Byzantine hands. And then the ground shook. An earthquake rolled through Egypt, its force reaching the coast. The Pharos, towering but rigid, absorbed the shock. Travelers later wrote that the uppermost tier of the lighthouse cracked, parts of its walls loosening and falling. The once proud flame at the summit flickered unsteadily, as if the gods themselves were warning of change. But the people of Alexandria loved their lighthouse. Repairs were made. Stones were replaced. The tower, though scarred, continued to shine. Sailors still saw its fire across the waters and felt relief. For the moment, the Pharos endured. Centuries passed. The lighthouse remained, but not unchanged. Accounts from Arab travelers in the medieval era describe it not as the flawless beacon of old, but as a tower showing its age. Its surface was weathered, its tiers uneven, some parts crumbled, others patched. And yet there was awe. The travelers still spoke of its grandeur, still measured its staggering height, still marveled at its construction. It was as if the lighthouse had shifted roles, no longer a perfect wonder, but now an ancient survivor, bearing its scars proudly. Then came a great quake in the year 956 CE. This was no gentle tremor. The city of Alexandria shuddered violently, houses collapsed, and the sea roared against the shore. The Pharos, towering above, could not escape the fury. Travelers and chroniclers tell us that the lighthouse was badly damaged. The very heart of its structure, the cylindrical upper tier, broke apart. Imagine the proud lantern chamber, the place where fire and mirror once shone so brightly, tumbling down in stone and dust. But again, the Alexandrians would not let it die. Repairs followed. Though altered, though diminished, the Pharos rose again. Not quite the same. Its crown was different, rougher, but it still gave light. Like a wounded but unbowed guardian, it continued its watch. But time, patient and unrelenting, always waits. In 1303 CE, the Aegean Sea groaned with one of the most powerful earthquakes of the medieval world. The shock spread far, and Alexandria shook violently. Chroniclers describe devastation across the city. Walls collapsed, mosques cracked, streets filled with rubble. And the Pharos? The blow was too great. The already weakened tower, centuries old, fractured deeply. Large sections crumbled. The once grand structure was now a broken giant, its tiers shattered, its fire extinguished. For the first time in more than 1,000 years, sailors approached Alexandria and saw only darkness on the horizon. The silence must have been haunting. 20 years later, in 1323 CE, another powerful earthquake struck. Whatever remained of the Pharos's wounded form collapsed further. The tower that had stood as the second tallest structure in the ancient world, rivaled only by the pyramids, was now reduced to ruin. Stones tumbled into the sea, others lay in heaps upon the shore. The beacon of the ancient world was gone. Yet even in ruin, the Pharos did not vanish entirely. For centuries, its stones remained, some scattered beneath the waters of the harbor, others repurposed by builders. Parts of the lighthouse were used to construct the citadel of Cape Bay in the 15th century, a fortress that still stands today on the very site of the lighthouse. In this way, the Pharos lived on not as flame, but as stone, reborn into a new guardian of Alexandria. Travelers in later centuries, from Arab chroniclers to European explorers, wrote of the ruins with reverence. They spoke of its majesty, even in collapse. They described climbing over broken marble, tracing ancient inscriptions, and gazing at the fragments of what once had been a wonder. The fall of the Pharos reminds us of something eternal. No matter how mighty, every human creation must one day bow to time and nature. Yet its legacy, the idea of the lighthouse as a beacon of safety, of light in darkness, could not be broken by earthquakes. In fact, the word Pharos became the word for lighthouse in many languages, echoing across cultures, centuries, and continents. Even in ruin, the Pharos guided the world, not ships on the sea, but words, ideas, and symbols that carried its memory everywhere. And so, as you rest tonight, picture the lighthouse in its last days. Its stones cracked, its tiers broken, its fire dimmed. Yet on quiet nights, perhaps some sailors still looked toward the darkened shape on Pharos Island and remembered the light that once had been. The fall of the lighthouse was not an ending. It was a transformation from stone and fire into memory and symbol. The Pharos of Alexandria no longer shines in flame, but it shines in history, in legend, in every lighthouse that has ever stood to guide the lost and weary. Sleep now without thought that even when wonders fall, they leave behind a glow that no earthquake can extinguish. Breathe deeply, dear listener. The night is calm. The stars above shine as they once did over the ancient harbor of Alexandria. Though the Pharos itself is no longer standing, its light is not lost. Like starlight that continues to travel long after the star has burned out, the legacy of the lighthouse still glimmers in the world around us. Close your eyes and let us drift together into this chapter, a gentle voyage across centuries and seas. We will see how the memory of the Pharos lives on in words, in lighthouses built across the world, in stories told by poets and dreamers, and even in the quiet discoveries beneath the Mediterranean waves. Perhaps the most delicate echo of the Pharos is hidden in our very language. The name Pharos became more than a proper noun. It became a symbol, a word used across lands far from Egypt to mean simply lighthouse. In French, the word phare is still the term for a beacon at sea. In Spanish, it is faro. In Italian, faro. In Romanian, phare. All of these come from that one tower, from the fires that once glowed above Alexandria's harbor. Even when the stones fell and the flames died, the word continued, carried across tongues and generations, whispered every time a sailor or poet spoke of light by the shore. So tonight, whenever we say the word lighthouse in some quiet way, we are still speaking of Pharos. The Pharos was more than a building, it was an idea so powerful that it became a blueprint for all future lighthouses. Think of the rocky coasts of Spain, the cliffs of Ireland, the islands of Greece, the rugged shores of Maine in the United States. Along them stand towers of stone or iron, with their lanterns shining bravely into the night. These are all children of Pharos, each one a descendant of that original guiding light. When medieval and Renaissance engineers built new lighthouses, They often thought of Alexandria. Travelers' accounts described its three tiers, its mirror, its fire. Though many never saw it with their own eyes, the descriptions inspired towers from the shores of the Black Sea to the Atlantic coast of Portugal. Even the Statue of Liberty, standing proudly in New York Harbor with her torch lifted high, has been described as a kind of modern pharos, a beacon not just for ships, but for people seeking hope. The idea of light guiding the lost, born in ancient Alexandria, still burns. The pharos has also lived on in stories and literature. Poets of the Arab world, traveling centuries after the lighthouse had begun to crumble, wrote of it with reverence. They saw it as a symbol of human striving, a reminder of how knowledge and faith could shine above darkness. In Europe, Renaissance scholars, fascinated by the seven wonders of the ancient world, copied old descriptions of the lighthouse, sketching imagined reconstructions. Painters filled their canvases with towering visions of Pharos rising against stormy seas, flames burning atop its summit. These were not just historical works, they were dreams, echoes of something too grand to be forgotten. Even today, in novels, films, and games, the Lighthouse of Alexandria appears again and again, not merely as a ruin, but as a mythic archetype, the eternal beacon, the tower that pierces the night. On the island of Pharos today stands another structure, the Citadel of Qaitbay, built in the 15th century by Sultan al-Ashraf Qaitbay. To defend the city against invaders, he ordered a great fortress to be raised upon the very foundations of the fallen lighthouse. And so, stone by stone, the old Pharos was reborn. Many of its original blocks, which had once framed the beacon, were set into the fortress walls. If you wander the citadel today, you are quite literally walking upon the remains of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Tourists and historians alike often speak of a strange feeling when visiting Qaitbay, the sense that beneath its military might, the memory of light and guidance still lingers. It is as though the Pharos, though changed, still keeps watch over the sea. The story of the Pharos doesn't only rest on land. In recent decades, divers and archaeologists have made astonishing discoveries beneath the Mediterranean waters where the lighthouse once stood. At the bottom of the sea lie colossal stones, broken statues, and enormous blocks that once formed the mighty tower. Some are carved with inscriptions. Others bear the weathered outlines of ancient gods, perhaps statues that decorated the lighthouse's base. Swimming among these ruins, one feels as though entering a dream, floating through the bones of a giant. These underwater remnants remind us that the Pharos is not completely gone. It still sleeps beneath the waves, waiting, perhaps, for the touch of the human hand and imagination to bring it to light again. Modern technology has even created digital reconstructions from these findings. Using sonar mapping and computer graphics, researchers have given us glimpses of how the lighthouse might have looked, its tiers rising like steps into the heavens, its flame blazing proudly. In these reconstructions, the Pharos breathes once more. What makes the Pharos so enduring in memory? Perhaps it is because it stands at the intersection of necessity and beauty. It was practical, saving countless ships from disaster. But it was also majestic, inspiring awe and wonder. That combination, usefulness and grandeur, survival and imagination, speaks deeply to the human spirit. Even today, architects and engineers look back to the Pharos not just as an ancient wonder, but as an early example of functional art, a structure that served, but also uplifted. When modern lighthouses flash their beams, when airports raise control towers, when skyscrapers pierce the sky with glowing crowns, each one echoes the old dream of the Pharos. That light can be both guidance and glory. Perhaps the most lasting echo of the lighthouse is not in stone or word, but in imagination. Though no complete blueprint survives, the image of the Pharos is etched in the world's memory. When we think of a great lighthouse tall, tiered, glowing with fire, we are imagining Pharos. When we hear stories of towers that guide the lost, when we picture flames burning across the horizon, we are recalling its ancient promise. In a sense, Pharos never needed to survive fully in stone. It survives in our stories, in every retelling, in every whisper of its name. It lives whenever someone looks out to sea and imagines a light waiting to guide them home. And so, dear listener, as we come to the close of this final chapter, let us return to the quiet of night. The sea lies before us, calm and endless. The stars above sparkle gently. And though the Lighthouse of Alexandria is no longer there, we feel its presence in every lighthouse that flashes along the coast, in every story that speaks of guidance, in every dream that longs for light in the darkness. The Pharos was more than stone, more than flame. It was and still is a symbol of hope, a reminder that even when the night is deep and the waters uncertain, there will always be a light to guide us. So, as you drift to sleep tonight, imagine that ancient fire still burning across the horizon, a glow that reaches not only sailors, but dreamers, thinkers, and storytellers. The Pharos of Alexandria may have fallen, but its light still shines softly, eternally, in the human heart. Good night, Crescent Moon.